Hello and welcome to Elvenhome, and a happy new year to you all, to the first video of 2020. This video really concentrates on two things. The start of the design of the church school, which I mentioned in the previous video, and also some work that I did following seeing a product to help me put lights into some of my dapol coaches. When I started doing the recording on the church school, I found I had much more than 20 minutes worth of material. And it really decided me that I don't want to have a video that's completely filled with essentially one issue, because there's lots of things that I want to be able to do and to show you. So for the videos coming over the next few weeks, I will be keeping the scratch build part of it to around about 10 minutes. And I've already got enough for the next video. And as I get on with the build, that probably means that it'll probably be about 4 or 5 videos before the completion of the church school appears to you, even though I may hopefully get to that point a bit quicker. So let's move on now to have a look at the thought processes as I started to design the layout of the building, and then how I would go about thinking about constructing it. In the last video, I mentioned that having completed the work on the hotel, I had cleared my desk, and all that was remained on it was just a piece of paper and a pen. And I started idly doodling, and you can see in front of you the idle doodles that I started doing. I'm not going to describe these doodles because it's much easier to describe the plan underneath. I started off by thinking of having the church school on the right hand of the building, the chapel on the right hand of the building, with the entry doors facing you as you looked at the building, and the school running to the left. But looking at the space that I had and just beginning to think about that would be a bit tedious in shape, and wanting to give it a bit more shape, I came across an idea still for an L shape, but rather different. This is the plan of the school, and as it sits on the layout, you will be looking at it from this side. So what I've come up with instead is the school part sits at the back of the building and runs the complete length. It is separated from the chapel, which is the smaller building here, by a corridor that runs the whole length, and the entry to the building is through 2 doors here, one for girls and one for boys. This is going to be a Victorian building, built probably around 1850, 1860, and very much in the Gothic style. If you think Palace of Westminster, which looks as though it's been there hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, actually it was built in the 1840s after a tremendous fire burnt down the previous palace building. So apart from the Great Hall, pretty much the rest of the building only dates from just over 160 years ago. But it's very much in the Gothic style, and therefore you can get away with using Gothic windows and Norman arches in your chapels, even though the building is not of great antiquity. Now, as you may know, as I've said before, for those who saw the design of the hotel, I like to do the internal design of a building in some detail, not with the intention necessarily of modelling that or putting all the rooms in, but the way a building works internally will show itself on the external look of the building. So where you put a room, you need to think, well, there's going to probably be a window to that room. There may even be, as this building is, if it's heated by fires, coal fires, then you need to make places for chimneys, and where are you going to position the fires, because that will link directly to where the chimney breast will lead up to the chimney pots at the top of the building. So I had to start thinking about how the building was laid out, and it's a very straightforward building, and I may make some adjustments here when I come to actually build. But as I said, this corridor here has 2 doors with 3 windows in between, with an entrance for the boys and an entrance for the girls. I would see this as being where they hang up coats and things if they are lucky enough to have coats. And then they enter the girls' classroom and the boys' classroom. So it's segregated education, which is not uncommon. When I designed it, I just shut the classrooms off there. I think I might make the classrooms a bit longer, but in the design, I thought that this big room would be something like a library. That may be a bit generous because it's a huge room. But there would be a library there or some room here, and then a corridor leading down here. At the end is the head study, the staff room, lavatories for the teaching staff, and then lavatories for the boys and girls here. There's a door from this corridor into the chapel. So the children would go in without having to go outside, would go into the chapel for morning assembly. It has, of course, an entrance here to allow people on a Sunday to get into the chapel without needing to come into the school building. So that's the basic idea of how I'm thinking about working out how the building works internally, and then translating that to what you would see outside, given the way the rooms are particularly used. And once I've got the plans sorted, I can then start work on the front and rear elevations and the side elevations, which is what the other drawings are here. If I just very quickly take you up to the top, you can see this is looking from this side. So at the front you've got the two entrances, girls and boys, windows along this corridor. This is about 8 foot high. So it's not very tall, but it's only meant to be a corridor for them to get into, with a slanting roof that goes from that point upwards. You can see it there. And then 4 big windows, the idea being that it lets in lots of light, but they're up high so the children are not distracted by what's going on outside. Again, looking at the plan, you can then see the side of the chapel, which currently has 3 windows, fairly large windows along the side. That's because on the other side of the chapel there's very little light that can get in. And if I come now to look at the front elevation, so that's looking at if we're looking at the plan, looking at it from this way, on the chapel you can see it has a fairly large size window there with 2 lancet windows and a door, which you go into by going up 3 steps. Here you can see the side end wall of the school, which is going to have nothing in it. It's just going to be a plain wall. And here you can see the end wall of the corridor with a sloping roof going up from the front of the building up to meet the taller part of the school. On the back of the building, again on the basis of how it's worked, this is the boys' classroom, this is the girls' classroom, this is the library, that's to give light to the corridor, that's the main window into the heads room for this side, and the chimneys, the fires are all here, which means that the chimney breast then goes up to come out at the chimney pots in those 3 places. There will be a chimney pot halfway up this side of the roof, because if I come down here, this is a side window into the head study, this is the staff room, and I think the chimneys would back onto each other with a common chimney breast coming up and giving out to a chimney pot on there. The back of the chapel is quite plain except for a large window which will go in there. So that's the design process that's got me to this point. What I'll do in a moment is come back and show you how I started to translate that into a mock-up and show you some of the materials that I'm going to be using to build the school. Although this section is very specifically about N-Gage, because it talks about Dapol and Dapol N-Gage coaches, the light bars that I'm going to be talking about are available in 00 scale for fitting to 00 coaches, though you would also, I think, have to do the modifications to be able to add pickups to bring the power up to the light bar. For those of you that have Dapol coaches, you will know that most of their coaches, or many of their coaches, are ready made to accept light bars, which Dapol also used to supply. About 18 months, maybe 2 years ago, the warm white or the yellow version, which is the ones that I used, went out of supply, and I contacted Dapol to ask when they might be coming back into supply. And the problem they had is that their supplier for the light bars wasn't able to do that anymore, and they weren't sure when they would be able to find a different supplier. And I've noticed since that the white version has also run out of stock, and indeed I don't think they're even showing now on the Dapol website. So I was very intrigued when I saw in one of the Engage pages on Facebook that a company had started producing light bars, and in particular were making them to fit the Dapol Engage coaches. The other light bars they make will fit 00 gauge, so 00 gauge modelers may be interested, though there I suspect you will also need to do modifications to your coaches to fit the necessary pickups. If I pick up this Gresley blood and custard coach, you can see underneath there that the pickups are already built into the model to enable it to take the Dapol light bar. Now, I had a very generous birthday present last year because I turned 60, which was the Flying Scotsman set with the blood and custard Gresley coaches. And that's a Flying Scotsman and 4 coaches, all with the light bar fitted, together with a further 4 coaches which didn't have the light bars because they were just the basic coaches. So I've been wanting to find light bars so that I can run the whole rake with lights in them. So I was very intrigued when I saw this, and I bought a set of 4, which cost me the princely sum of about £32, I think, including postage, 32 or £33 for the 4 light bars, which is about the same price as if you bought the Dapol ones. They were about £9 each, depending where you bought them from. Now, because I bought 4 together, I got it all packaged as a job lot, but I believe that what you get if you buy one is, now for this is very specifically N-gauge. I don't want to vouch for sure what you get with the O-gauge ones, but if you go on the eBay link, which is where I bought this from, and I think is how they sell them, which I'll put in the description below, you'll see what it is that you'll be getting. You get one of these Japanese solderless joints, or whatever they're called. You get the light bar, and this obviously is for N-gauge, so it's quite small. And you also get 2 of these capacitors, which are fitted on each end of the light bar to allow for flicker-free running. Now, I'm not going to be fitting these capacitors because my other coaches are not fitted with anything to allow flicker-free running, and I don't appear to get too much by way of flicker, though that's, famous last words. But if needs be, I can always go back in and put these in if I do think I have a real problem, because fitting light bars into the coaches is very straightforward. And what I'm going to do is show you the process of going from this to the light bar in with the coach working. I've already done one, and it took me very little time at all. I may speed up the film at points because when it gets to actually doing the soldering, I'm going to just stop talking, because it seems to me trying to talk and to solder at N-gauge is just a recipe for disaster. Or I may just do some clever cutting, or not very clever cutting, whichever sort of the mood takes me. So first of all, if you've got the Dapol coaches and you want to get into them, they're fairly straightforward. This roof just clips in at various points along the coach, and there I think are 4 clips on either side. They're not necessarily equal because of the way the design of each side goes, and what you have to do is have a fingernail and just gently, he said, you can see that I've just begun to separate that and pull it up, and the roof comes off. Very straightforward. And you can see now, if you look inside, there are 4 clips each side, but the clips do not actually marry up. So it is very important to remember the orientation of the roof when you took it off, so you can put it back in the right place, because inside there are little stubs onto which these clip. So That's the orientation of the roof. I'm going to leave that there to remind me that's the order in which it goes back in. And on the inside, you'll see down the end here the male version of the plug. I think that's the male version of the plug, which is then connected and wired into the pickups from the wheels. So once we've got this attached to this, everything is pretty straightforward. On the inside of the roof, there are two grooves. The dapole light bar, I think, does gently fit between them. This, I've discovered, is ever so slightly bigger, but it really doesn't matter because you don't stick that in, you just position it, and then once you press that into the roof, everything sort of holds itself into place. The only thing you do have to do is that this is too long, and it's too long by one LED's worth of lights. Fortunately, you can cut this down, and I don't think you'll be able to see this. Is it coming up? Oh, it just is. Just above these three terminals here, you'll see what looks almost like a dotted line. That's where you can cut. So we'll cut this top section off. Also, just so you know which way is round, this is the important end. Don't cut this end. This is the sort of business end to which we're going to attach the cables and which will sit down by the plug. And then, but you can cut any point above these four here to make the thing smaller. So I'm going to go away and cut that because it's much harder to do than you'd think. It shows a pair of scissors, which I did use and which do work, but they require quite a bit of force. So I'll be back in just a moment with this shortened. So I've cut that down, and that will now give me, let's make sure I've got this right, yes. That will now give me a better length to sit in the coach. The next thing that's got to be done is to cut this down to a better length, because you certainly won't need all that cable. I mean, as you can see, if I just sort of put this in, you're not going to need much more than I've actually exposed there. If you put about that in, allowing for the fact we've got to bare the ends and solder it on, that will be more than enough, because there's really not much distance from the top of the plug to the ceiling of the dapole coach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that down, bare the ends, tin the ends, and then attach them to this. You get full instructions how to attach this, and you can attach this plug to a number of places up the length of the LED. I'm going to put it at the end because that's where the plug is, and I attach, just to show you, I'll attach the red here and the yellow next to it, and that's all I need to do. So I'm going to go and do that, and I'll come back once that's done, and then we'll reassemble the coach, put it on the layout, and see if the lights come on. As you can see, I've wired on the plug very straightforwardly. Little bit of flux on each wire, and then a little bit of solder to tin them, and then again put a little bit of flux on the tinned ends, and then very gently with I think it's a 16 volt soldering iron, which I use for pretty much everything and seems to do the job. The flux on the end of that helps the solder to run, and both of those have gone on fairly straightforwardly. All we need to do now is to put this back into the coach, which is a straightforward thing to do. This just plugs into here. Well, that's easier said than done, but we just need to use a little bit of brute force. Make sure it's oops. So it's not plugged in the slightest bit. There we go. There we go. That's gone in. Ha! I won. And then what I tend to do is to try and fold the wire down behind the plug. There's a little gap in there, and handily, because it's the equivalent of the loo, you can't see it. You get your roof which, that's that way around. Place that in position on the roof. Now, as I said, there's no fixing there, but it will fix, I promise you. Place your roof. You need to be very gentle because there are fittings on the top here that break as soon as you look at them. Clip the roof back down gently into position. Sometimes you have to pull the side of the coach out to get it to drop in. There we go. There we go. And now for the big reveal. To the left. Right. Well, let's see if this works or not. The re-railer ramp is in place. Just make sure I've got the coach properly put on there. And we have power. So that's 2 of the coaches done. I'm going to complete the others and then we'll get them pulled round by something or other and see what they look like. So with just a little bit of work, I now have the full rake. That's 4 coaches with the light bars fitted. They were really straightforward to do. So if you've got some dapple coaches with no light bars, then I would definitely recommend going to the Train Fabric eBay shop and getting yourself some. Just to say, I paid for all of this with my own money. I've no connection with the company, but I'm really pleased that this has worked. The next thing perhaps for me to have a go at doing, though I suspect it might be damn fiddly, is to buy an old Farish coach and see how I go about fitting them for lights by putting pickups and the plug that would be necessary inside. The mallard, which is pulling the other rake of coaches, those are all Farish coaches, and they would need pickups fitting to enable them to light them, but it really, I think, would be fairly straightforward. So we may give that a go at some point. But that just completes this section showing how I've fitted some new light bars from a new supplier to some dapple coaches. Well, that nearly brings us to the end of the video for this first video for 2020. In the next video, you'll see the next stage of the development of the school, including the mock-up that I built to let me just see if all the proportions worked. And I also am going to be starting work on building the scrapyard, which you may remember is going to largely be in this area here and extending out around here somewhere, because I'm going to have a fence line coming along here, which will be the entrance into the scrapyard, and I'll talk a bit more about the work on developing that as well. So until I speak to you again in about a fortnight's time, I hope you enjoy your modelling. If you have any comments that you want to leave, please do leave comments. I'm always pleased to receive them, and they've always been so helpful. If you've liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. That's always helpful. And if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. It'd be great to have you along, and hit the bell notification so that you know when I'm uploading videos. But until I speak to you again in about a fortnight's time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.